Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Ana Calvo and I work in communications for the Driving Urban Transitions Partnership. We are having today a new episode for our Urban Lands Talks series, in which we, as usual, invite different stakeholders to share knowledge, to share experiences, and also their views about a topic. Today's topic is about green-blue infrastructure. And I would like to invite you all to write on the chat where you are joining us from today. And also thank you all for joining. The topic of today, we want to focus it on like uncovering what kind of misconceptions or sometimes conflicting views or interests appear maybe when you are trying to implement nature-based solutions or green-blue infrastructure projects. But we also want to highlight how these projects actually happen, what make them happen, what influences that these projects come to light and that we see them in our cities. So for that reason, we invited 4 speakers that are joining us today. The first one I would like to introduce is Marie-Christine Romier. She is a research director at the engineering school in Paris. And she's also the project coordinator of a project that we funded in 2022 that's called Green Storm. Marie-Christine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I'm very pleased to join this lunch talk today. So I'm a senior researcher in Paris area. My field of research is on the urban hydrology, and I'm mainly focusing on source control of urban runoff and of the associated pollutants. So I'm developing a rather applied research, and I'm working in a close cooperation with practitioners and municipalities in the Paris region, developing field experiments, in situ monitoring, and also modeling approaches. And over the last years, I have been mainly focusing on the use of green infrastructure for urban runoff management. And at the moment, I'm coordinating the Green Storm project, which was financed by DUT. And Green Storms is dealing with nature-based solutions for stormwater management. In the project, we aim to make them more resilient to climate change and also assess how far this solution can help us to make the city more resilient and how we can promote the deployment of such solution in the cities. Thank you.
That sounds excellent. Thanks for joining us, Marie. The second speaker I would like to invite to join us is Gerfried Ambrosch. He's an award-winning conservationist, and he also co-authored one of the chapters in our latest publication that's called Towards Regenerative Neighborhoods. Gerfried, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe a little bit about your work and background?
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for the invite. So I'm involved with a number of conservation groups, and I've initiated my own projects in urban and suburban areas. My main focus has been on improving habitats for amphibians, which is directly connected, of course, to green and blue infrastructures because they need water to spawn, to procreate, and they need corridors, green corridors to migrate. So these are 2 of the main factors here. I'm based in Munich, but my work is also my projects rather, in Lower Austria, in Southern Austria, to be precise. And so the thing is that we're now facing some conflicts with redensification efforts in cities, because many amphibians, rare species, endangered species have been driven out of their natural habitats through intensive farming, agriculture, things like that, pesticides, you name it. And so they find, interestingly, in some of the largest cities in Europe, such as Vienna, they find sort of like little niches where they can survive. But now those are endangered because of redensification, and so there's a conflict there between different ways of approaching these things.
Thank you, Gerfried, for sharing a bit of your background on giving us a good introduction to biodiversity in cities as well. The third speaker I would like to introduce works in a municipality. She's a deputy mayor in the city of Minsk, and she's also part of a project that is financed by DUT that's called Integrate Nature-Based Solutions. Katarzyna Wathiuk, would you like to share a couple of words with those who are joining us today?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me for the talk. I'm very happy to be with you today because I believe it's an opportunity to learn from you, from professionals. I'm a deputy mayor, as you said, who is in charge of the implementation of the project, the Transformative Potential Nature-Based Solution. And we are in the program, in the project, thank you to the cooperation with Warsaw University of Life Sciences. So we learn from professionals, and today I'll be happy to tell you about the hopes and challenges which are in front of us, because we are just to start and to inform the public about the project we are in. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Katarzyna. And then last but not least, I would like to introduce Mihai Nita. He's a professor at the University of Bucharest, and he's also part of one project that was funded by the UT that's called Green Ink. Would you like to share a couple of words with us about you and also about the project that you are part of?
Yes, thank you very much, Anna. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. As you said, I'm a professor at the University of Bucharest. I'm a geographer working mainly in urban planning with a focus on the urban planning of nature with all the associated concepts. In the same time, I'm a researcher and I'm teaching courses on urban nature planning to the students at the University of Bucharest Faculty of Geography, and also trying to actively be involved in the way nature is managed and planned in the case of Bucharest, which is the city I live in. I'm involved as an expert in the working groups of the Environmental Protection Agency of the Bucharest City Hall, dealing with the urban nature planning. The project that you mentioned, which is called Green Ink, actually means growing effective and equitable nature-based solution to inclusive climate actions. It's actually led by the University in Amsterdam. And we are working on 5 case studies from different contexts in Europe, and by different means also geographical context, but also planning context. It's Amsterdam, Bucharest, Brussels, Șeleftăia, and Turin. And we are trying to start from the institutional and policy context of each of the city and develop research instruments such as living labs and digital twins, all with the purpose of providing to the local decision makers and policy makers a list of the enablers and barriers of developing nature-based solutions, which are also inclusive in relation to climate. Thank you. Looking forward for a wonderful setup and good talk.
Thanks to you all. All right, so then we can dive into maybe the first question that we have. We thought about just sharing a little bit of an introduction to why, for example, why should we, or why would you encourage citizens and other public authorities to support green blue infrastructure projects, for example, that include nature-based solutions? I would like you to, all of you, to share an example or something that comes to mind, and maybe also what why urban authorities or citizens should support or be with you in this journey on having a project and implementing a project in your local environments and cities. So would you like to start, Marie-Christine?
Yeah, well, in the field of stormwater management, the conventional grey infrastructure have been facing limitations for some time now. One of the main issues we have to face is urban flooding due to increasing imperviousness, but also this is an issue that might get even more drastic with the impact of climate change, which leads to more extreme situations. And we have, an example at the moment with the drastic floodings that are affecting the eastern part of Europe. And green infrastructure are a solution that might help to make our cities more resilient to these climate extremes. They help to improve source control of urban runoff by promoting infiltration, storage of water, infiltration, recharge also of the water content of the soil and the water table, and evapotranspiration. They're also useful to manage pollutant loads, because in green infrastructure, we can promote the filtration of the runoff, absorption of pollutants, and many biodegradation processes. So I think it's a great opportunity for stormwater management, but these green infrastructure, they offer a lot of other benefits for citizens and also for biodiversity. And I think, Gertrude, you can develop on this subject of biodiversity, which is not my subject.
Right. Let me just say that, of course, we're now facing some of the worst floods in, as you said, Eastern Europe and the part of Austria I'm originally from. The eastern southern part of Austria is very, very severely affected. And we're all here to discuss nature-based solutions to these kinds of problems, which, as you said, are in part caused by climate change and, of course, are made worse by the gray infrastructures that are dominating throughout our cities still. But yeah, as you pointed out, my main focus is on biodiversity, which means, as I said in the introduction, there's certain species of animals, and in my case, I'm mostly interested in amphibians, because they really are indicators of healthy, intact ecosystems. And a lot of people might not care about amphibians directly, but when you talk to sort of stakeholders, ordinary citizens, the municipalities, it's important to make clear that healthy ecosystems, intact ecosystems, really benefit us humans as well. And I think that's the tricky part. And one sort of, pathway for me, or a way to get to people and get them involved and get them interested, is by sort of reminding them what nature was like when they were young. So have this emotional aspect to it. So biodiversity is such an abstract concept to a lot of people. Biodiversity, okay, some more bees or whatever. But there's certain sounds that especially older people still grew up with. That frogs croaking at night, mating calls of different animals, things like that. And that's for me a good pathway to sort of to get to people and to communicate. I think that's a very important aspect of it all.
Would anyone else like to share?
Okay, thank you very much for mentioning the flood we are all experiencing directly or indirectly in our countries. My home city is located in central Poland, So it's not about us directly, but of course we have just started helping the South and our partner cities in Czech Republic as well. So today it's a hot issue, and of course it provokes lots of talks, questions about the climate change. So that's one of the reasons, and somehow it ensures me that the actions we are taking to make people aware of the climate change is really important nowadays. So I'm very happy with the opportunity to be a part of the City Hall in the project. And your question was why we should engage residents and other stakeholders. The answer is very simple, because everyone is responsible. And I believe that small steps count. And just to give you an example, how we work with our community, we are worried that we have problems with our local river, but of course, somehow we, as the employees and as a local government, we try to find solutions, but we want to involve our citizens as well. So, for example, we made up an idea of using bokashi balls. Sometimes they are called mud balls. It's environmentally friendly way of cleaning up bodies of water. So we invited kindergarten children to be a part of the event because they could throw the balls into the water. We had a chance to explain how it works. And of course, we also invited some specialists who could answer questions asked by passerby. So it was located in our park. So it's one of the idea, how can we make people aware? Because as I said, it's really important to acknowledge that everyone is responsible, not only the city council, because we are not able solve all the problems. On this Sunday, we are going to start to inform the public about the project we are in. So, for example, we have prepared a great and designed a great exhibition of different solutions within nature-based solutions, just to make them aware and to start the discussion and other activities we have planned.
Thank you all. If I understand correctly, then it's about, for example, telling them, both citizens and local authorities, that these solutions could help to mitigate climate change effects, such as the flooding that we are seeing these days. It's also about maybe making them remember their own childhood and their own memories from the area, the local areas. And it's also about reminding them about the other benefits that could bring, for example, like resilience to climate change or to infiltration, like increased infiltration in the river banks, and also bringing them to be a bit more aware, right? For example, in the case of citizens, so that they are aware what the solutions are, and they can also be part of the solution again. Okay, so then I would maybe like to dive in a little bit more about the specifics that allowed these projects to happen. I think at this point, they are not so widespread, like green blue infrastructure is there in some cities, in some places, but it's maybe not the most common solution or the most common way of building. So I would like to know a bit if there is some things that allow it or that enable these solutions to take place. For example, is it about financial resources, need of a specific expertise, or volunteer work? So in your view and your experiences, what do you think it took to consider making, for example, green roofs in cities? Or what does it take to a public authority or to citizens to support the investment in wetland restoration and other kind of alternative building methods that we see in some cities today?
I would like to intervene here if possible. Yeah, I think we acknowledge that we start from the need of such measures to be implemented. Like in the case of Bucharest, we are talking about one of the most polluted capitals in Europe. Air pollution, it's very high, and we also have recurring heat waves during the summers. And now, of course, we also have challenges to water management. So it's a need, and more and more stakeholders and also population are acknowledging this, that we need to change the way that we see our cities or settlements develop, the way they are planned and the way they are managed. In the same time, your question, it's a bit tricky to me, because we say that these are alternative methods or innovative methods, but in some cases, most of them are just reverting to the past, the way that we used to do things. And I will give just some short examples, like dealing with water management in the city. We are trying to develop bioswales, which are innovative solutions. But if you look at older generation pictures or settlements, you will see that the initial ways of taking water out of the settlement were actually channels of dirt covered with grass. But at some point, we become displeased by this method, because it also had, let's say, disadvantages, and we wanted the water to get out faster, and we were not satisfied with the bars and bees that came, and so on and so forth. But now we are actually remembering that it also comes with co-benefits, including for biodiversity, but also other aspects, like for those channels covered in grass were also used by children to play, which is a lot safer than playing on a channel of concrete. Yeah. In the same time, so the citizens are reclaiming this connection to nature. They used to be an integrated part of our lives at some point, and especially in the big cities, we've lost this connection, and now we are trying to gain it. So of course, this is dependent a lot of educational work that is happening in the past time. And what's fantastic in the case of Bucharest is, and a lot of big cities in Romania, is that people are reclaiming that. Of course, that you need to have funding available for doing that, and political will, but the funding is very much out there. There are a lot of money to be spent, including EU funding, national funding. It's just a matter of making the wise decision, and not in all cases, let's say, central decision. It's best for choosing the way to spend money, but sometimes going very local or specific might be a better idea. And also in Romania, we are starting to have these types of grassroots initiatives, which allocate better financial resources. But maybe Gerfried could tell us more about how that works.
Right. So one of the things I'd like to emphasize here is that a lot of conservation efforts here in Bavaria and in Austria still depend on volunteers. So that's a great factor is volunteer work, which on the one hand is great because it really connects people sort of like at a grassroots level to their environment, and sort of like they become stakeholders in that sense as well, as because they help, you know, restoring nature. On the other hand, it's not a good sign that there just isn't enough money to get enough professionals involved and pay them, you know, a living wage to do these things. So with, you know, the projects I've been involved with and the projects I have initiated, of course, you know, money is always an issue, and then you have to sort of, you know, see like where there might be money for projects like that, and you have to sort of, you know, talk to authorities. You have to sort of like get involved in municipalities. This is where it becomes political, of course, and very often, if you know, ask one party if they could help you out, the other parties will be against it, you know, just out of principle and things like that. So these are issues to maneuver that I find really challenging.
What about what allows actually that your projects take place? I think, Mihai, you mentioned that it was a bit of the like people reclaiming nature spaces, and because they have a connection to nature. and also about the financial resources. And that's what it allowed it, right?
Yes, but it's still not enough critical mass to produce, let's say, a complete change of the way the cities look and function. Yeah. Of course, the key element would be education, but when we talk about education, we tend to look at it just what we do to children, yeah, let's say in the public system, and say but education refers to all of the stakeholders involved in the city planning systems and city management, and not only acknowledging or knowing that such solutions are there, but also finding the way in which they can connect their work or their field with such solutions, and identify the benefits on a mid-term or say long-term also for them, and integrate them in their work specifically. So I think, of course, there are difficulties in finding the right staff, but I think we need to develop education beyond schools and the public system, and include methods of promoting the benefits of such solutions across all the actors.
What about Maria and Katarzyna? What do you think? Like, is it public authorities? Do they play a very strong role in the implementation of green infrastructure or blue infrastructure projects? Is there something?
If I take the case of stormwater management in France, there was an important shift in paradigm from centralized and gray to more decentralized and green infrastructure. And at the beginning, I think it was mainly triggered by a situation of crisis because of the flooding issues. And this led public authorities, local authorities, to take some regulatory measures. They took measures to limit the discharge of runoff in the existing facilities. So in case of a new urban development, the developer, they have to find other solutions than gray infrastructure, and this helps to promote the development of small green infrastructures. But also what I think is very important, because regulation is important but not enough, it's to develop a scientific and technical expertise on the subject. And this can be reached through demonstration and through projects that associate scientific expertise and involve practitioners and also communities. I think we have to work all together to demonstrate what can work, how far it can work, what we can expect from this green infrastructure, and document the performance of this infrastructure. And our role of researcher is also to help develop knowledge, but also develop tools to help on the design of such facilities, to make them more performant, to assess what are the limitations, what could be improved, develop tools like, for instance, modeling tools or even technical guidelines. And I think the work we do in DUT projects, for instance, is very beneficial for this, because it promotes collaboration between research and municipalities, and also it promotes sharing experience between different countries.
I do agree with you that we need different stakeholders, some professionalists, but of course, I do believe in the agency of residents, but of course, they need some help from us, some knowledge. It is really important. And as Mihai said, we should just to remind ourselves about the solution which nature offers us. So just to, I'm from the generation, of course, in the past, I remember when we collected rainwater. Now it's not that popular as it was in the past. So it's just about reminding people, about showing them new possibilities. And Anna, when you ask a question, you have mentioned green roofs. So when I think about Minsk Mazowiecki, which is a very compact city, just 13 square meters, but we have almost 40,000 people living. So that's the option. That's the solution. So I think that, of course, looking at the needs, it's really important because we have to adjust nature-based solution to the possibilities, what can be introduced, what can't, because there are some limitations. In Minsk, we do not have many green areas. We have a beautiful park, which of course act as wetland, and we should think about some restoration in that part, but green roofs are the solutions when it comes to small towns, and we always should keep it in mind that we have to adjust the needs to the possibilities. But we also discuss about what matters. Is it about money? And of course, money is important, funds are important, but I believe that we should start with the awareness, and sometimes we do not need money because we cooperate, work with professionals who can help us, as, for example, Minsk cooperates with the university. So from time to time, we invite them, we ask them for advice. So it is about dialogue, cooperation, and helping one another.
Thank you all. I think that gives a little bit of insight of what enables, or what made these green infrastructure projects happen. It's a bit of financial resources, political will, but also others. Then, if you have any other comments to add, feel welcome to do so. Otherwise, I would like to dive into what it's sometimes stopping these projects to happen. So what is making them to be not to be implemented sometimes? What kind of conflicts or sometimes misconceptions do you think one might need to address when it comes to implementing green blue infrastructure projects, at least that you found in your experience? And how do you, or did you, address them in order to make the projects happen?
So I already mentioned in my introduction that there is sometimes a conflict between climate action and things like redensification, again, sort of like preventing urban sprawl, which is an important issue, and sort of like the idea of biodiversity and improving biodiversity in cities, because you need space for that. So this is one of the conflicts there. But in my experience, one of the main issues that people have is that they have the impression that improving biodiversity, improving sort of like green and blue infrastructures, sort of like widening spaces, is at the expense of the citizen. So they don't really think about the benefits, and I think it's very important that we emphasize the benefits for quality of life, health, things like that, and not just physical health, but also mental health, because I think Marie-Christine, you said that I forget who it was. I thought it was Marie-Christine. We kind of like evolved in areas that we shared with. Maybe it was Michal. We share with animals, and we share with sort of like these elements, and it's sort of we have to sort of like go back to that in some sense. And I think to emphasize the benefits like that, I think that's really where it's at.
When you mentioned that sometimes people consider that improving an area for biodiversity's sake could actually be at the expense of citizens, at citizens. How have you encountered this conversation, and what have you used as an argument for counteracting that view, so to speak?
One of the main issues is always that people are really sensitive when it comes to anything that might sort of present an obstacle to them driving wherever, right? So one of the classic issues is sort of taking away lanes on the road to create bike paths, to widen sort of like a green corridor or whatever it may be. It's sort of the argument is always, oh, this is gonna just make things worse, and there's going to be traffic jams and congestion and all that. And of course, it's a very one-dimensional way of thinking, and the difficult part is to get this other dimension into the conversation for a lot of people. And as I said, it really comes down to making people more aware of our biological nature, of like how we evolved, like what a natural surrounding for us should be, and that's where it's tricky.
I understand. Thanks for sharing. Have any of you have also encountered this kind of conflict, so to speak? When do you have to maybe highlight the benefits of some?
Yeah, I would like to intervene here, and also I would also like to link to the question that was posed in the chat that says that the fact is space is scarce in cities, and how we can balance the keeping them dense and compact, but in the same time have enough green and water space. So first of all, we need to consider that the city is a matrix where we cannot only put residential in one place, commercial in one place, and then nature, green or blue, in the other place next to the other. So there has to be mixes between them. So you will have nature, either green or blue, inside residential, inside commercial, inside public spaces, and so on and so forth. So it shouldn't be a divide between using green and blue and any other urban function. It should be organically integrated inside in them. And in sometimes it also provides other benefits, like let's say the streets that are developed in a way which include green spaces and have lanes and so on are a bit safer to drive than those that are straight lines and you can go with high speeds there. So we need to include them in all of the functions of the urban area. In the same time, we need to acknowledge that for a large proportion of actors, of people involved in the management and planning, the benefits of green and blue are not easily understandable, are not so easy, because most of them are indirect on long term. They are not always can be transferred into direct money. Like if you make 5 parking places, you can directly calculate how much money the city hall will get from renting those places. But if you put 5 trees, it takes a while for them to develop. It influences the health. Let's say you breathe better, but also the mental health of inhabitants if they look out the window and they see a tree. So their benefits are rather difficult to calculate and integrate in the classical analysis that we used to do. So we need to acknowledge that, and we need to make baby steps in each direction, including planet, including all sorts of different things, behaviors, patterns, values, as well as updating our current, let's say, planning and management systems to allow for such solutions.
Yeah. One difficulty that we have faced with the green infrastructure is that there are a lot of different stakeholders that are involved in their implementation and operation. And often they have different priorities and different expectations from this green infrastructure. And sometimes it might be difficult to align all these different expectations. For instance, if we take the case of a road upgrading project, we have a lot of cases like this in Paris conurbation, where the stormwater management department, they require, actually it's more than us, they require the that green infrastructure are implemented for runoff management, like swells or bioretention cells or storm trees. And the road service, well, it's not in their technical culture to deal with green spaces, and they are more concerned by security issues or by the structural issue of the road. And then there are also other city departments like the green space department or the cleaning department, which will have to maintain this facility afterwards, but that are not always involved in the project from the start and may not accept it later on because it makes more cleaning work because of the leaves, or for the green area services, for instance, often they are afraid that dealing with runoff in their green areas will bring pollutants and will be a limitation for plant growth or even lead to health problems. So I think one important point is that people have to be involved from the start. They have to meet, to discuss, to develop the project together and to find solutions together. And one thing also is increasing awareness about green infrastructure through education, public education, continuous training for technicians and engineers, and create opportunities for people to meet, to exchange, having further on to develop things together, maybe to work together on some demonstration case.
If I may follow up on that experience that you had with the maintenance companies, that they maybe were not so pro of these green spaces because of having to clean extra like leaves and so on. Were you actually involved in those conversations, and how did you address their concerns? Was it, as you said, it was afterwards, not beforehand? Did you get to an agreement or some sort of understanding?
Yeah, I think it's easier if it's not afterwards, because afterwards it's difficult to convince. So it's better to involve from the start, take into account what are the different fears or what is what is limiting, and share. I think people they are afraid because they don't really know why do we do this, how do we do this, and what will be the result.
Thank you. It's really important to do so. Are there any other times when you've had to involve people?
I do believe it's a long process. It's worth taking for sure. And that's a great idea to start different projects from the very beginning with residents, just to involve them and to show them that they are able to contribute. And I think that there is I thought about two misconceptions about implementing the ideas. First of all, that a lot of people believe that technology can solve problems on its own. So I would say that we believe too much in technology, not acknowledging that it's our responsibility as well, that it's not only about engineers, about city council decision. So involving people from the very beginning, it's really important. So just to give you an example, what we have planned within the project we are in. So we are going to work with children, with students from primary school, from high schools, with professionals, even with, because I work for the City Hall, but I do believe that not everyone, including myself, is aware of the solutions. And sometimes, you know, when we show the examples, what can be done, it's very helpful because one may not think about it. The other thing which comes to my mind is participatory projects that we should involve to show people their agency. And in small groups, I think they are more willing to ask questions about, because when we use the words nature-based solutions, probably for many people, it doesn't say anything. So what are they? These are things which we do just to acknowledge what can be do better and so on. It matters. So I used to be a teacher, so I do believe in education, that we have to, of course, think about enriching our competencies in that field as well, but to educate, and educate.
Yeah, I agree. Education is very important. There has been quite a few questions on the chat. I would like to pick one of them that is about how to deal with companies whose business model is to produce gray infrastructure. Yeah, and how would you deal with them?
I would like to intervene here and also link with what Katarzyna said before and be a bit controversial, because what she said is it's very good that we need to engage, that we need to involve, but that's still, in my book, it's not the best way. It's just dealing with the current situation, because that it still looks like a top to bottom procedure of developing things, where some institutions or someone thinks of the magical solution, and then we come people, let's say, to do this. But I think the best way is when people meet in the middle, where there are civic initiatives of, let's say, local inhabitants in the neighborhood that decide together that we want our neighborhood to go in this direction, and they come and put pressure on the institutions. Yeah, so it's not just, it's meeting halfway between the desires and the needs in the institution. And linking to your question about the companies, they shouldn't wait. They should see what's happening on the market and just shift and transform their processes according to what the market requires. Yeah, so it should be proactive for all of the stakeholders. There shouldn't be stakeholders who are left on the sideline and we just engage them, or they give them, or they have their classical roles and they're going to do this for centuries. It's a world that is changing at faster pace than ever before. Technology is included, although we don't like it that much, is included in almost all new developments. And all the stakeholders should understand, okay, my role today is this, but how can my role be improved in 10 years, in 5 years, tomorrow? And what can I do more than that, more than I'm doing today? So those companies, I believe that large companies are also developing ways in which they can remain competitive. Like, let's say, if you produce traditional infrastructure like bricks, how can they produce bricks from mud taken out from cleaning channels? Yeah, so or for treatment plants. So there are ways, but we need all the actors to be proactive and think of a sustainable future for all of us, and what their place could be in that future.
If I may develop further on this question, I don't think that the development of green infrastructure will completely suppress gray infrastructure. I think we will still need them. We will need both, and we have to see how to find the best combination between green infrastructure and gray infrastructure.
Maybe depending on the context.
And we discussed about involving different stakeholders, so they should be taken into account as well, because to show them and highlight that they are important in the whole process, just to address to that that's also business responsibility for the climate change and so on. And of course, I do not question technology because we believe in it as well. But I think that some may think that that's the only area which is responsible for solving problems. But I do believe that our small step count as well.
I agree with Michael on the importance of grassroots initiatives in neighborhoods. I think that's a really important way to push the issue from the bottom up. I think that's very important. And I also agree with sort of the significance of market sensitive solutions. And as you were talking, like one example here in Munich came to mind. So Munich has a lot of gravel pits and quarries, which are directly connected and needed for gray infrastructure. But those gravel pits, what's astonishing about them is they are very often biodiversity hubs because they sort of imitate landscapes and sort of like dynamic landscapes that have been lost, sort of, when rivers would meander and, they kind of imitate that. So a lot of rare animals find a habitat there. And one of the conservation societies in Bavaria, the LBV, has directly approached these companies that run these quarries and gravel pits, and sort of like created a certificate for them, which says amphibian-friendly company, which they can then put on their websites if they cooperate with the conservation projects. And as far as I know, it has worked really, really well in the past. And a lot of these projects are still ongoing. And I think it's directly connected.
All right. Then, I mean, it's only a few minutes left to the end of the talk. I think you've touched upon a couple of issues that could lead to new urban land stocks, I would say. Then I would just like to end this talk with a do and a don't when it comes to green-blue infrastructure projects and its implementation. What would you advise those who are listening to us? I mean, you've already done a few nice points, each of you, but if you would have to leave the audience with a couple of thoughts on a do and don't, what would it be?
I can start. So, of course, everything what we do within green and blue infrastructure, education, solutions, and so on, when we are aware of it, how they work and how they can be implemented, of course, it will prepare us for the climate change, and somehow we can be pre-adopted and prepared for the climate change. So it matters, and it's important to know what they are. But when I think, also basing on our experiences, everyone has lots of work, but we should find the time also to inform people. For example, when I think about Misk Mazowiecki, we have some nature-based solutions, some surfaces which infiltrate water, but it looks like a concrete pavement, for example, concrete path. But just to take one more step and to install a board with the information, just to inform people that it works, so they do not question, because when they see, they may think it's made from concrete, which is not true, but it's our role to inform. So I believe it's a lot of work to be done within it from different sides. Everyone is responsible.
Yes, I agree with you. And of course, everyone is impossible. And what I like to underline is that there is no magical solution. So there is no one size fit all, one thing that works in a city might not function in a city next to it 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers, or let's say, because there are so many different things to consider, starting from the geographical condition to the cultural patterns to the social economical backgrounds of the location itself, that you need to be extremely careful and consider all those whose interests are affected by the existing situation or by the new development. So take time to consider what you're trying to do there, count its benefits and its disservices, let's say, see if all the stakeholders agree with those trade-offs, and then start co-creating, co-producing, and if possible, co-managing that space so that you have a lot of involvement from different stakeholders.
Well, I would say, of course, I agree with this. I'd also say, and this ties in with it, think locally, act locally. Like that's sort of my creed a little bit. Join your local conservation environmental group. You know, sometimes all it takes is just, you know, a shovel and a free Saturday morning that you just use to help these groups, you know, dig a pond or whatever it might be. So I think that's really the grassroots approach that I follow. And as far as don'ts are concerned, I think it's important to not be too confrontational, as a lot of these groups or some groups sometimes are, because the incentive and the idea, the ambition should always be to get as many people on board as possible. And you can't do that by treating people like idiots, you know, and sort of like, but you have to sort of like learn to communicate effectively with the general public. And I think that's sometimes, you know, a shortcoming.
So let me add one sentence, because I always, whatever we do, I always ask myself a question: what I can do on individual level, because it depends on me, local level and global level. So thank you very much for mentioning that.
I will be very short for the do and do not. For do, I would say get involved in collaborative demonstration projects that involve scientists, practitioners, and communities. And for also for cities, I would say you should think your organization a bit differently, because at the moment it's too much a siloed operation between the different services. And for the do not, well, do not forget to involve all the relevant stakeholders, residents, the different urban services, the users, and so on, from the very start of any green infrastructure project.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you to share the do's and don'ts. I think you gave us some food for thought. I also would like to thank you just to participate and to be part of the talk today. There were quite a few questions in the chat, and we will follow up with an email to all of you with the link to this recording on YouTube, and also with some contacts to the speakers. Yeah, and you will find this Urban Lands Talk upload on YouTube. The next one happens to be next week. So if you haven't signed up, do so. It's going to be about a 15 minutes city. So thank you, everyone, and we will leave it here for today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.